One might think that when you have just finished the purchase of a possibly 800-year-old Italian farmhouse ruin and have barely started thinking about how to get around to restoring it, going furniture shopping would not be the first thing on your list. But that is exactly what we did. We had renovated 2 apartments in Italy already before we ended up with this massive project. In both cases we were lucky. It took us only 1 or 2 trips to the antique markets to find exactly the furniture that we were looking for. But we couldn't be confident it would work that smoothly every time. After all, it normally takes a lot of market rummaging to find exactly the pieces that we end up being in love with. So this time, we decided to start the furniture shopping early. Very early. The apartment we had in the village near the ruin was naturally sold to finance this new adventure. And the new owner wanted to buy also everything in it. But we kept our personal stuff and some of our dearest market treasures. Plus a 100 kilos outdoor dining table in reclaimed teak that the new owner could absolutely do without, and that will represent a substantial challenge to transport to its new home, but we'll worry about that later. All these things would need to be stored somewhere drier and safer than a ruin with no roof and doors, while waiting for the completion of the building. So we rented a storage spot at a moving company in the nearest city, where we can also bring our newfound market treasures as we find them, and have them wait patiently there while we're making them a new home. We have found that our favourite markets so far are further north in Italy, and the one where we have found our most cherished pieces, and that is also in just the most picturesque setting, is the monthly market in Arezzo. So, an early October morning, just weeks after we had signed the contract on the ruin, we were off to Tuscany to start treasure hunting. The market takes place in the medieval part of town, filling the Piazza Grande in the center and spreading out in all the surrounding streets. Vendors from all parts of Italy come there to sell both furniture and all kinds of smaller items, and the selection is quite a bit above the regular flea market level. The prices are higher too, but not excessively. As Arezzo, due to the market, is a haven for antique enthusiasts, the centre has also filled up with regular antique shops of various price levels. So what you can't find in the market, you can often discover in one of the many shops. At this point, our goal was to keep an eye out for larger furniture, things that we just need one of. And therefore, that one thing should be exactly as we picture it. That would mean checking out a lot of long dining tables, large cupboards and wardrobes. We didn't find any of that matched our dream precisely. But we collected a few smaller treasures, and after a nice lunch, we went to pick up a rental car to move further on. From Arezzo, there's just a short drive to the village of Pistrino. Pistrino is not a remarkable village in any way, but they have an amazing warehouse that collects both antique furniture and reclaimed building materials. The prices are obviously higher than in the market, but you can also find things here that you'd never find in a street market. So if you're, for instance, looking for a fireplace the size of a small bedroom, this would be a good place to start. The warehouse also has a sister company that has an extensive selection of old restored doors, plus they make new doors that are exact copies of old ones. Apart from looking for dining tables and wardrobes, another purpose of this road trip was to visit places that sell reclaimed building materials and check out prices and selections. Ideally, we would like to restore the ruin entirely with old and reclaimed materials, such as tiles, doors, etc. But the price for these elements is often far, far above the prices of new products. So this is something we will have to consider carefully to not destroy the budget completely. We might choose to prioritize a few elements though, and instead go for more budget-friendly solutions on other things. Or, of course, make a fabulous bargain somewhere. So that's obviously plan A. All this was plenty of action for one day, so before travelling any further, we spent the night in a former Benedictine abbey right outside of Pistrino. Sunday morning, we got in the car and headed south to visit another market that takes place on the same weekend. In Tuscany and Umbria, there are lots and lots of local antique markets. Every weekend you'll find Saturday or Sunday markets in various towns. The one we went to this time is located along the main road in the small Umbrian village of Pisignano, an hour and a half south of Arezzo. This market has a little more of a flea market feel, and you will find less refined antiques here and more slightly rougher items. But the prices on these kind of markets are generally lower than at the one in Arezzo, which makes it a good place for a bargain. We didn't find any of the bigger items we were looking for here either, but did pick up a few smaller things that we just couldn't leave behind. Even though my haggling skills admittedly leave a lot to be desired. I still have a lot of time to practice though, so by the time this ruin has become a house, I expect to be fluent in bargaining.
Ci sentiamo per
Sì, perché allora vi chiamo, ma ci siete sempre o
No, è meglio che un colpo di telefono.
Solo su appuntamento.
Benissimo.
Ok.
Va bene, vi ringrazio.
Ciao.
Ciao.
After a couple of hours on this market, we were quite content, but decided that the day still was young enough to room a last leg of the road trip. So we headed west and drove back up above the border to Tuscany again, towards the sea. Just south of Monte Argentario on the west coast, there's a shop along the road that sells antique furniture, but also things like old stone basins and fireplaces. It was a long drive and we made it there just around closing time, but the manager was nice and let us in to have a look around. We did see a few dining tables and lots of wardrobes and cupboards, but none that matched the exact image in our heads. So we noted down prices and left the guy to finally close his shop for the day and drove off to find a hotel for the night in nearby Orbetello. But the road trip wasn't over quite yet. We still had one more place to go. So Monday morning we headed for the Lazio region and the Lago di Bracciano area. For both the two former projects, we had found old doors and reclaimed floor tiles at a place that an architect friend had taken us to. That is neither a market nor a regular shop, but just a guy selling stuff right out of his field and containers. He was still there and was happy to show us around and teach us a bit about his building materials.
I travi antichi non sono come quelli di adesso, per gli alberi messi in posti magari almeno l'ingresso. Noi abbiamo il molto antico refrattario, qui sono lisci, però è la stessa pavimento che vi ho fatto vedere.
Sempre 40
Sempre 40. Questi, quando metti questi qui, ti sembra più antico di tutti qua.
Sì.
Però è pieno di buchi, irregolarità, ma sono originali.
E questi quanto vengono?
90 euro
Al metro quadro.
al metro quadro. Però se sopra vuoi fare le cementine, questa è nella parte grande e nel bagno praticamente ti raddoppiano, hai in linea in continuità e c'è lo stesso ricoprimento una volta 30 centimetri.
It is too early to buy any of these things yet, but we went through prices and techniques and, for instance, were shown how he makes thinner floor tiles by splitting the thicker original ones, which could be one way of obtaining the look we want, but at a lower cost. This would also represent an easier installation. The old stone floors and tiles have irregular thicknesses and therefore have to be installed in a bed of wet cement to get an even surface.
Sì.
Since labour is as big a factor in the budget as the materials itself, also this could involve an interesting cost reduction. This field was the last place on our list for this trip. So we headed down to Rome and got on the train down to Salerno and the ferry out to Minori for a few days of meetings and building techniques research. We obviously also had a visit to the house, just to make sure it hadn't fallen apart since the last time we were there. It hadn't, not completely, but it did still look like it would be a great idea to get the work started sooner rather than later. So we were glad to know that while we were busy driving around the country looking for tiles and tables, someone was already at work preparing the building application, which we will tell you more about in the next episode.
Ok, va bene.
And if some of you are keen to have even more specific details on the markets and shops we visited, like names, addresses, a few price examples, how long it takes to drive, suggestions for where to sleep or eat while you're there, we have taken your advice and are setting up a Patreon account. And as soon as we actually get around to it, this information will be one of our first posts there. Promise.